Good evening. Welcome to Veroscope's forensic linguistic analysis of the Jennifer McCabe trial testimony in the Commonwealth versus Karen Read trial. We're going today to run through the 911 call, which we did a few days ago in analysis. And you're more than welcome to go back into the video library and find that. I would highly recommend that. And if you're new to the case, perhaps if you're viewing from the United Kingdom, this is the lady who we will be analysing today, Jennifer McCabe, on the witness stand, and she's being interviewed by the prosecution attorney, and we might as well dive straight in to the actual video. The lady on the right-hand side is Karen Read, the defendant.
You share with us that you were trying chest compressions. Before the chest compressions, did you make a phone call?
I called 911.
I'd like to move to introduce a copy of that 911 call.
Okay. Do you have something physically to... Thank you.
Miss McLaughlin does.
Thank you.
With
45. Thank you.
the court's permission, I'd like to play Exhibit 45.
Yes.
No, this is for emergency.
Yes, I need someone to come to 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Mass. There's a man passed out in the snow.
You can't hold up, you can't know, okay?
Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
You have to tell us the rest of the line.
I just keep going, like, you guys got area 50, okay? Okay.
Struggling to build your sales pipeline? Finding the best prospects feels impossible? Meet Katie, your AI.
I know. Where's the budget? I don't think like the parents.
911, what's your emergency?
I need someone to come immediately to 34 Fairview Road, Canton, Mass.
What's going on?
There's a guy unresponsive in the snow.
Is it snow 34?
Yes, 34, the Albert resident, yes. I just pulled up behind him.
Okay, 34 Fairview?
34 Fairview, Canton, Mass, yes.
911 is on your motor, where's your emergency?
I don't know.
Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry, can you come to 34 Fairview Road in Houston?
34 Fairview?
Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow.
Okay, what else?
He's gonna get here, okay?
Okay, what's going on? Is he face down?
We just flipped him over.
Okay. And who's that in the background? Is that someone related?
That's his girlfriend, his name is John, please.
Okay, how old is he?
John is 46 years old.
46, how long has he been outside?
I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and
Is he breathing?
a couple of hours. Is he Terry? Is he? I don't know if he's breathing. There are two women trying to into his body and they're hysterical.
Okay, can you just try asking? I know it's tough, but we already have the fire department going. They just got to know.
Okay. Is he breathing, you guys? It doesn't seem to be breathing.
Okay, do they know how to do CPR? Do they want to attempt CPR?
Yes, he's got to do CPR. No, I guess he's gone.
Okay, they don't feel comfortable doing so?
No, I think he's passed away.
Okay. All right, we have the fire department and the police department on the way. If everyone's declining CPR, then I'll hang up with you, and if anything changes, you can give us a call back. Where are you guys outside?
I'm right up front of his car. I know, I'm on the phone with the ambulance. I know, honey, I know. Terry, you gotta get off of me. Terry, you gotta get off of him.
You know if there was any alcohol or drugs involved?
He had been out.
They've been on drinking?
Yes, I'm talking hours about maybe, and I don't know how long he's been in the snow.
Okay, is there any bleeding or anything? Maybe his head out?
Yes, possibly. There's bleeding in the face.
Okay, bleeding from the face? All right.
Yes.
And how big is the pool of blood, if there is any?
Something's coming out of the know that one of the women is doing CPR.
Okay, one of them is doing CPR?
Yes, they're both working on him.
All right, if she's doing CPR, and just give us a call back if you tell us your response, all right? But we're on the way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I didn't interrupt during that call. I thought I would let it play all the way through. Some of you might have observed some of the body language, facial expressions, both from the defendant and from Jen McCabe. So perhaps we can discuss those in the comments. But moving on to the actual trial testimony, it would make sense to run through before we hear it what we're about to hear. So the prosecutor in this case asks Miss McCabe to describe your mental state when you were speaking to 911. So this is a very specific question, which he has chosen on purpose. McCabe answers, I guess the best way to describe it was I was in shock. When we hear this in forensic linguistics and statement analysis, we prepare to look for a dichotomy where it's convenient for them to be in shock and where, because of the shock, inverted commas, they won't be able to remember certain things, or they won't be able to achieve or do certain things, and it suits their purpose. But at other times, they act in the opposite way to shock. So here we see the linguistics of not fabrication per se, but the linguistics of where it's going to suit me. I'm going to describe, the best way to describe it is I'm in shock. So instead of actually answering the question, we get this pattern. Moving on. My heart was racing. I was trying to be as helpful as I could. That's interesting. As helpful as I could. And quite often in statement analysis, this is very important, because they're not saying as helpful as I can be, but as helpful as I could be under the circumstances. It's an unconscious slip of the tongue. And get the information to the most important information, sensitivity, the information is sensitive, out as quick as I could to the 911 operators. So for those who have been watching the previous programs, you're starting to see indications of deceptive patterns. But also the scene. There with Karen and Kerry was a bit chaotic between the two of them. This is interesting use of language, and I think we're going to see this again. And if we listen very closely to the 911 transcript, I believe that there could be some justification of why the scene was used in that 911 call, in my opinion. Kerry was a bit chaotic between the two of them. So here we see the fracture of the pronoun. When we see this pattern, what's going sometimes through the mind of the individual is they're not stuttering. They're about to deliver the sentence with the first I, but change their mind. They've run through at lightning unconscious speed what they were going to say, didn't like it, and then at the unconscious level decided to change the sentence and begin a new I. So I was just, minimization, trying. We always watch out for this word, because trying is not the same as achieving or doing. So minimization and trying, deceptive marker, combined with the fractured pronoun I, we will often hear deception after this pattern. So I was just trying my best to be as calm as I could. Interesting Interesting, isn't it, that we have the I could sensitivity. To get help there as fast as I could and to answer their questions the best that I could. Isn't that interesting? So immediately we have the beginnings of deceptive patterns and deceptive linguistics. So let's hear that play in real time.
Ms. McCabe, describe your mental state when you were speaking to 911.
I guess the best way to describe it was I was in shock. My heart was racing. I was trying to be as helpful as I could and get the information to the most important information out as quick as I could to the 911 operators. But also the scene there with Karen and Kerry was a bit chaotic between the two of them. So I was just trying my best to be as calm as I could, to get help there as fast as I could, and to answer their questions the best that I could.
Okay. So in my opinion, this is coached and pre-scripted, not delivered very well. The question, of course, as to who has been helping her, who has been coaching her, perhaps family members. I think this goes beyond discussions with the prosecutor and has lent towards more intensive coaching than should be done. So I doubt it was with the prosecutor. Perhaps it was more with other witnesses or friends. It shouldn't have been with the prosecutor, of course, because otherwise there are Brady situations. So let's carry on with the analysis. Here we have the opening represents what behavioral analysts term a qualifier cascade. Let's have a look at it again. So lots of fractures in the linguistics, and essentially huge sensitivity with the coulds, and the sequential layering of uncertainty markers that reveal possible fabricated narrative construction. McCabe begins with I guess the best way to describe it, which is a triple uncertainty architecture that most trauma victims, of which she is, don't produce. When someone experiences actual shock, they describe it directly. I was in shock. They don't need this entire cascade of qualification, which she does because of the pre-planning and the pre-coaching. They don't search for the best way to describe it, essentially using legal precision language. Yes, it's a coaching marker. And this represents something which is out of her traditional baseline, having looked at her linguistics. So she's not actually recalling her true emotional state, but she's rather executing a prepared explanation for the contradiction between her claimed shock and what we'll see later demonstrated as certain competencies during the 911 call in direct opposition to the claimed shock. There is real strategy that goes on in this call. And if you go back to the previous video, you'll see that all laid out and identified. So perhaps if you have time, you can pause the video and read some of those other observations. Let's go back to the actual testimony.
Before you told the 911 operator John O'Keefe's name and his age, you said there's a man in the snow. Do you know why you chose those words?
I think I just wanted to get out the most specific details. So a man in the snow versus, John O'Keefe and into a story. I think I just was get the details to them as fast as possible to get help there to him as fast as possible.
When you told the
Notice the fractures there.
911 operator that your friend John O'Keefe was the person lying in the snow, how did you know his age?
We used to joke because he was a couple months older than me. So I would, say, oh, well, you're older than me. It was a silly little thing between friends.
Okay, let's look at that testimony in detail. So the prosecutor says, before you told the 911 operator John O'Keefe's name and his age, you said there's a man in the snow. Do you know why you chose those words? So this is a very specific question. And I believe this is preempting what will be an obvious question from the defense. McCabe answers, I think, again, the beginnings of possible fabrication from her true thoughts and her true feelings. It isn't necessary to say, so this unnecessary language. I just, again, wanted to get out, it's an unusual linguistics, isn't it? I think I just wanted to get out the most specific details. So, reason why, a man in the snow versus, John O'Keefe and into a story. Isn't this leakage? I think I just wanted to get out the most specific details. So, a man in the snow versus, John O'Keefe and into a story. It doesn't make any sense. I think I just was get the details to them as fast as possible to get help there to him as fast as possible. So this as fast as possible, in my opinion, is the actual opposite of what she wanted. She was on a search party specifically looking for John, and because she describes him, and this is a killed police officer who is lying in the snow, and so she deliberately, to the first operator, minimizes an officer down and just calls it a man in the snow as if she's just pulled up. So it's the opposite of what she's claiming. So she's claiming that she wanted to get out the most specific details and then gives the most unspecific details. A specific detail would be, we've been looking for my friend, he's a police officer, he's unconscious in the snow. That would be specific, but she minimizes to a man in the snow, reducing the urgency, which is again in direct opposition to as fast as possible to get help there to him as fast as possible. So whoever's been watching 6 or 7 of the previous, you would know that we have sensitivity everywhere in the statement. Prosecutor, when you told the 911 operator that your friend John O'Keefe was the person lying in the snow, how did you know his age? We used to joke because he was a couple of months older than me. So I would, say, oh, you're older than me. Missing grief. He was silly little, this was it. It was silly little, it was silly little thing between friends. Okay, this is a clever prosecutor because what he's doing is he's quickly moving the jury on from the real problem being this terrible, terrible beginning of the call. And he doesn't want to linger. So he's done his job by getting it out there so that the defense doesn't have the ability to rip this to pieces. But then quickly moves on with introducing the friend aspect. So the prosecution's question structure reveals awareness of the critical vulnerability. Absolutely. They're fully aware that this is the opposite of what we would expect. It's extremely strange, in fact. And if you could put in the comments your views on that, that would certainly get the discussion going. They're preemptively addressing the depersonalization of John. If you listen to the call very carefully on the last video, you will also hear Jen McCabe describe it, referring to John's body. It seems not to be breathing. We don't say that unless we are aware that the body has not been breathing for quite a while, because as far at the unconscious level, we still view the person as a human. But when we say it isn't breathing or it stopped breathing, it's just wrong. So she uses the incorrect pronoun and instead uses an article for the body. So the prosecution know this is a major problem. If the defense team had discovered that she used the word it, and I believe she also uses the word seen incorrectly in that 911 call, and so we will see the word seen put into this testimony too often for it to be a coincidence. I believe that there is strategic placement of the word seen in this testimony to make to cover the possible inclusion of the sea, the scene, oh God, the sea, the scene in the 911 call. And in my opinion, referring to the crime scene and the fear being the forensics being disturbed. So, the energy expenditure ratio reaches 7 to 1. McCabe uses 42 words to defend a 6-word phrase. And we don't see that in authentic, truthful explanations. It's over-explanation in simple terms. And also, do you remember, she says versus. So she's comparing, she's using analytical language, which indicates coaching. It indicates preparation and framing. Interesting use of the word framing there. So someone trained McCabe to present this tactical analysis rather than simply explaining her true emotional state at the time, which was actually the question. Let's move on and play some more of the tape, or video rather.
When you called the 911 operator, had Kerry and the defendant already been around or near John?
Yes.
Do you know if they had begun trying CPR before you called 911?
I'm not sure if they had, because Karen had straddled him and was lifted her shirt, was warming him up, and then Kerry was yelling at her to get off. And I think when Kerry got the blankets and was trying to put him under John, I think as she started to move him and wipe him, blood started to come out. And then Karen was afraid that he was going to choke on his blood and wanted to move him on his side. But then Kerry was yelling at her, we can't move him. And this was kind of all going on while I was talking to 911.
You described what you saw, and you said at some point he was bleeding.
Okay. So, when you called the 911 operator, had Kerry and the defendant already been around or near John? This is interesting. So the question is purposeful and specific. McCabe: yes. Prosecutor: do you know if they had begun trying CPR before you called 911? I'm not sure if they had, because Karen had moved over to him and was trying to warm him up. And then Kerry was yelling at her to get off. And I think when Kerry got the blankets and was trying to put them under John, I think as she started to move him and wipe him, so she's wiping him, blood started to come out. And then Karen was afraid that he was going to choke on his blood and wanted to move him on his side. So I don't know how she knows Karen was afraid of this, unless she said so. But then Kerry was yelling at her, "We can't move him." And this was kind of all going on while I was talking to 911. So we do have a reasonable reason why you shouldn't move somebody who's potentially injured. But there is another reason, possibly disturbing the forensics. The prosecutor. You described what you saw and you said at some point he was bleeding from the face area. Was that before or after he was moved? After. Okay, so I don't know the specific reason, but the prosecutor is interested in establishing this, and McCabe is playing the part very well. But this wiped him first, before the blood started to come out. Immediate after and immediate no, which tells me this bit is rehearsed. This is pre-planned. This is coached, in my opinion, because we very rarely see this level of one answer and confidence in her linguistics. And it's the prosecutor has led this very specifically, and so the chances of boom boom with the prosecutor's specific question is minimal unless it had been prepared and coached, in my opinion. Prosecutor, after you call 911, what do you do next? McCabe, I so we recognize think I think I. So immediately deceptive marker. We know what's going to happen next at some point is going to be deceptive. I think, minimization I, called my sister and she didn't answer. Okay, so that gets rid of that problem. So what call did you make? And then, as I think I called her, no, you didn't, did you? You called somebody else, in my opinion. I think I called my sister and she didn't answer. And then, as I think I called her, as I was walking over to John and she didn't answer. And then I immediately got down on the ground and Kerry Roberts asked me to take over. So she gets away from the phone call. And it would be very interesting to see who she did call and who did answer. Prosecutor, how long did you try to help John for? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This is an interesting question. I think this is for the jury. This is to indicate that Jen isn't aware that he's already dead, and so therefore gets involved in trying to help him. Whereas historically in these sorts of cases, if the individual knows there's no point in helping, they don't. In the same way that if you know, inverted commas, the missing child is not missing, you don't search for them. I think we have a similar. I'm not sure if she helped, specifically John. My impression might be that she didn't. Prosecutor, how long were you and the defendant and Miss Roberts there before someone else arrived? Police officer was the first to arrive. In the moment, it seemed like a long time, but I think it was fairly quick and they arrived. Okay, so we have fractured linguistics, missing all sorts of correct structure. Prosecutor, any point during the time when you try to help Mr. So he goes back to try to convince the jury that she's not aware that he's dead and that in fact she's trying to help. Any point during the time when you tried to help Mr. O'Keefe and the first police officer arrived, at any point did you see any signs of life from Mr. O'Keefe? No. So do you notice he's quite good, this prosecutor, at delivering a statement and then switching it to another question and then giving his witness the ability to say no. Any point during the time when you try to help Mr. O'Keefe, do we assume that no is to this? Because if so, she's answered truthfully, in my opinion. Or do we assume, and the first police officer arrived at any point, did you see any signs of life from Mr. O'Keefe? No. So the clever prosecutor allows her to answer the truth to both points in one single no, one of which doesn't help her, but the jury would miss it 99% of the time. And that's because it's very, very difficult to do forensic linguistic statement analysis at conversational speed. However, the skill does build, and by running through the videos which we're presenting on this channel and playing them again, perhaps listening to them as you're doing the washing up or something, you do absorb it rapidly. And you'll notice that your skill level increases to the point where you can use it looking at actual statements, but then you'll find yourself seeing things at conversational speed. And it really helps in life with finding deception in your own life, whether that be at work or in your personal lives with relationships. Being aware of deception around you is extremely useful. I did skip over some of these points, but do feel free to pause the tape or come back or save the tape when you have more time. And you can run through them. So let's carry on with the actual testimony.
Bleeding from the face area, was that before or after he was moved?
After.
Before he was moved, did you see any active bleeding?
No.
If you're looking for a recently renovated, open plan, sea views, golf views villa in the heart of the Gulf.
The villa looks nice.
After you call 911, what do you do next?
I think I called my sister and she didn't answer. And then I think I called her as I was walking over to John and she didn't answer, and then I immediately got down on the ground and Kerry Roberts asked me to take over.
How long did you try to help John for?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
What do you think? The facial expression told me everything.
How long were you and the defendant and Miss Roberts there before someone else arrived?
Police officer was the first to arrive. In the moments, it seemed like a long time, but I think it was fairly quick that they arrived.
Any point during the time when you tried to help Mr. O'Keefe and the first police officer arrived, at any point did you see any signs of life from Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
When the police officer first arrived, do you remember what happened next?
I remember it was very chaotic, but there was talk about a spotlight. And I remember, I think I got up and ran to kind of wave to get the police officer's attention so he could see where we were.
And then what happens?
The police officer, not sure specific, I do remember him asking about John. I think he said, is he a drug user? He was just asking some basic questions.
And what's the environment? What's going on around you?
Okay, let's catch up with the testimony. So, when the police officer first arrived, do you remember what happened next? I remember sensitivity marker. There was very chaotic, but there was talk about a spotlight. And I remember, I think, I got up and ran to kind of wave and to get the police officer's attention so we could see where we were. The sort of linguistics that we hear in deception, if we don't know what we're looking for, and at conversational speed, it passes over our unconscious. We sort of accept it's almost speaking. But when we look at it slowly in the actual transcript, we can begin to recognize the pattern of deception. And I think I mentioned in video 3 or 4 about how it can appear, once you know, like an accent, like a French accent. So if you've heard a good Canadian French accent, whenever you hear it again, you recognize it, or a good French accent. And deception linguistics are very similar. Once you know, you know. Once you hear it, once you see it, it's there. And we don't see it. This is the wonderful thing about forensic linguistics and statement analysis. We don't see it in truthful statements. It's a very particular pattern. Prosecutor. And then what happened? The police officer, I'm not sure specific. I do remember him asking about John, I think. He said, is he a drug user? He was just asking some basic questions. And what's the environment? What's going on around you? Karen's just minimization, running around crazy. Okay, so here we have the beginnings of narrative and storytelling. Like just yelling, screaming, kind of like ping pong. What are you trying to do? Asks the prosecutor. McCabe. I was just trying to minimization. I was just trying to talk to the officer. I guess. I just went into this type of mode of all right. I have to just talk to him, get the information out. Figure out how we can best help John and what happened to him and try to save him ultimately. I mean, we have complete fracture of the linguistics. All right, I have to just talk to him. We have unconscious breakdown. Get the information out. So she's sensitive about the fact that we all recognize her tactics in that 911 call about how she actually did the opposite of getting the information out and was deliberately slow rolling the call. The call also went to the wrong area at first. And she said, why did I do that? Or something along those lines. That came out unconsciously. Prosecutor. And what happened next? What happens next, rather? McCabe. More officers begin to come. Fire and EMT. So the scene becomes active. The scene. Again. So she's introduced. So this is the second time that she's introduced the word consciously. And I believe I heard that she used unconsciously during the actual 911 call. Oh my God, the scene. And I believe that's the crime scene that she was concerned about, and concerned about the forensics being disturbed. Get off him, Kerry, she screamed. Get off him. And she wasn't happy about the body being turned over. The scene. The scene becomes active with a lot of different presence. You know, John, I fractured. So here we are. Look at this. I think. So we're going to have something deceptive afterwards on the whole. They lift John onto a board at one point. The officers are asking us questions. Karen's kind of coming over. Yes. Okay, so she's building confidence. We have percentage-wise the waffle factor. Before you deliver a lie, generally speaking, we get an abnormal amount of waffle or preamble. Truthful statements tend to be 25%, 50%, 25%, 25% what happened before, 50% the actual incident, and 25% what happened afterwards. And deceptive statements, we get a little bit of waffle longer than normal beforehand, shorter incident, and very little after the incident. They effectively psychologically want to get away from the lie because we're truthful beings, ultimately. At the unconscious level, we're truthful. So here we have the deception marker, which gives us the warning that something is going to be deceptive. And this looks truthful. And then here we are. It begins. The confident build. Karen's kind of coming over, talking to the questions, and then kind of just running away. And then she runs back over. She's doing a lot of screaming, a lot of repetitive, and then boom, here we go. This is why she did all of this, because what she really wants to do is get this out to the jury. Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? She says. You know, and now the confidence is built high enough, but it started here. Here's all the waffle. Here's all the waffle, and now the delivery. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Kerry, I think, is make Kerry's off, kind of making phone calls. I believe, to John's family. So she managed to get it out in the end. Let's continue on with the...
Karen's just running around crazy, like just yelling, screaming, kind of like a ping pong.
What are you trying to do?
I was just trying to talk to the officer. I guess I just went into this like type of mode of, all right, I have to just talk to him, get the information out, figure out like how we can best help John and like what happened to him and try to save him ultimately.
And what happens next?
More officers begin to come, fire an EMT, so the scene becomes active with a lot of different presence. John, I think they lift John onto a board at one point. The officers are asking us questions. Karen's kind of coming over, talking to the questions, and then kind of just running away, and then she just runs back over. She's doing a lot of screaming, a lot of repetitive, is he dead, is he dead, is he dead? Could I have hit him, did I hit him? Kerry, I think, Kerry's off kind of making phone calls, I believe, to John's family.
Okay. So, McCabe demonstrates impossible memory architecture. She claims uncertainty about her own actions. I'm not sure about CPR duration. I think about her own movements, whilst maintaining surveillance quality precision for Karen Read's behaviour. She captures exact quotes, counts repetitions, is he dead 3 times precisely, and provides creative metaphors, ping-pong. The selective memory pattern, amnesia for self-protective information and perfect recall for prosecution beneficial information doesn't occur naturally. And that's why we saw the obvious linguistic fractures in that part of the testimony. The characterization language represents systematic character assassination. So she's hurting Karen Read specifically. But she took a long while to gain the courage to build that up. But we saw the deceptive marker before. It just took her a large percentage of the following testimony to get to the actual assassination point. These aren't neutral observations, but clinical instability descriptors. McCabe isn't describing a grieving girlfriend discovering her boyfriend's body. She's painting a portrait of mental instability on purpose for the jury. This serves the prosecution narrative that unstable people commit vehicular homicide. The precision and consistency of negative descriptors reveals preparation rather than spontaneous observation in shock. So if you recall at the beginning of this video, she wanted to establish shock, but she uses it strategically. Sometimes she isn't in shock and sometimes she is. Critical quotes emerge that never appeared could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Yeah, okay, reasonable observation, but they could have occurred outside of the call. Yeah, the selective memory pattern, the self-amnesia. As we go through deceptive statements, this is common and uniform in the other videos on the channel. So we have high deception probability just in this small portion of the trial transcript. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of this analysis. Later on in the week, I shall do another Karen Read trial testimony analysis. But other than that, I will also complete the Jennifer Soto police interview where she was given immunity. And there is a series on that. If you care to look at that. Okay, so hope you found that interesting and look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Okay, have a lovely evening.